Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we are back for part two of the handicap eye catchers, and we'll start off with a horse called Blue for You, who has dropped £2 to 99. Now, I think Blue for You has been finding those marks of 100 plus, just a bit beyond him. But he's definitely starting to come down to a mark that I'd be interested in of. 99 is just a little bit too high for me. 96, well, we know 97 would be where I'd be very interested. Obviously, he won a race off 96 last year, a big handicap at York. So he's definitely interesting when he drops another couple of pound. He's just one that I think just needs another £1 or £2. £2 would be good. £3 would be brilliant. So he's one that I do want to keep an eye on, but maybe not next time. Maybe it might be the time after that. Blue for You, who disappointed finishing 17th at Royal Ascot in the Royal Hunt Cup. Moving on to the next horse that caught my eye, and that was Forker Tamau. Now, Forker Tamau, for me, didn't appreciate that drop in trip. You can see he'd been running okay over the mile and two, fifth and seventh, before then disappointing quite considerably over a mile. Yeah, he just didn't want that trip, did he? I think he'll go back up in trip, and I do think he's interesting because he's fifth in the London Gold Cup, reads very, very well. Bertinelli, Desert Hero, Bold Act, Exoplanet all ran really well at Royal Ascot, including a win there for Desert Hero. But yeah, when he goes back up in trip, I think he's very interesting, and the fact that he's dropping in the handicap, it's going to get to a mark for him that he can certainly go close off. Obviously, he'd finished fifth of 92. They put him up a pound. He disappointed of 93. He's disappointed of 92. But that means he's down to 90. Whereas most of those in that London Gold Cup are now higher rated, whereas he's actually lower rated. So he's definitely interesting when he goes back up in trip. And I imagine it will be for this 1 mile 2 Bet365 handicap for 3-year-olds only. It's not going to be an easy race, but he's definitely going to be one that's going to be on my shortlist because I think he's nicely handicapped. The next horse, if he runs in this race that I'm going to suggest, I'll be very, very keen on him. It's Halifon. So Halifon tried a trip that I think is too far for him. Over 1 mile 5 at Ayr. He was out the back, never got involved. But his effort at Epsom wasn't bad. But I think with those runs under his belt, he's dropping to a certainly a winnable mark. He's down now to 85. Dropped another 2 here to 85 after previously being 94 just last year. So where do you go with him? I think there's a real obvious one for him. It's this race here, this 1 mile 3 handicap. It's a class 3, so slightly easier than what he's been running in. It's over slightly shorter distance than his optimum, but I thought the fact that he was able to beat Alfred Boucher at Chester, that was hugely eye-catching and impressive to win that, beating Alfred Boucher. Alfred Boucher, when I won a good handicap at York, I think it was, then won a. Did he not win? It was in the. I think he was then in the. He finished second, didn't he? In the Ebor, I think it was. You know, that's really, really good form. And if they return with Halifon to Chester, I'd be very disappointed if he doesn't go very, very close in this race. It's 1 mile 3 handicap. I think it's one that he has to go in if they want to get a win into him. And he is good at this time of year. Obviously, last year ran okay at Epsom, then won in June and won in July. So when they run in July at Chester on Friday the 14th, Friday the 14th at Chester, I think he will take all of the beating. Moving on to Perotta now. Some of these next few have been given chances by the handicappers. So Perotta went off the 7-1 favourite for the Royal Hunt Cup, having previously gone off 8-1 for the Victoria Cup. So they clearly quite like him off his handicap marks of 97 and 96. He's dropped another £2, and after he dropped another £2, which means he's now down to 94. A horse who, when he was a couple of years ago running in the Celebration Mile, for example, at Goodwood, he was running off a mark of 110. Now, granted, it was a group race, a Group 2, so it wasn't a handicap, but he had an official rating of 110. He's now down to 94. And I think if they want to go somewhere with Perrotta, it's got to be to Goodwood. Look at his form at Goodwood. Fourth in a listed race. It was a decent listed race. He'd also finished fifth in a Group 2, that race I just mentioned. Lavender's Blue, Ben Battle, Pogo, Chindit, all better horses than Perrotta. Fourth in a Group 3 behind Baid, Eldrama and Tasman Bay. You know, this is good group form. Surely this is where they're going to run, aren't they? The Goodwood Mile. Track clearly suits, trip suits, nicely handicapped. I think he would run a really big race in the Goodwood Mile if he turns up off just 94, having previously been as high as 110. I think the interesting thing with him is the fact he went off 7-1 for a 30-runner handicap, the Royal Hunt Cup. He went off 8-1 for a 22-runner handicap, the Victoria Cup. People believe, and connections believe, he is handicapped nicely now, and he's not really quite got it all together yet. But I think Goodwood could really play to his strengths. We know he likes the course, whereas his previous efforts at Ascot had kind of left a lot to be desired, to be honest. Although he'd won a Britannia back in 2021, his last 4 efforts now have been 13th in a Wolverton, 6th of 6 in a Group 2. He said 5 runs there. 9th of 20 in a Balmoral, 7th of 22 in a Victoria Cup, and 10th of 30 in a Royal Hunt Cup. Maybe Ascot isn't the place for him, but I think he's got much better form at Goodwood, to be honest. And with that in mind, if he turns up in that Golden Mile, I think he would go very close. Moving on to Ross Collin. Now, Ross Collin has dropped another £2 to 91, which means he's now off his best when he was running off 106 of David O'Meary. You know, what's that? £15 lower. The thing that I think they got wrong with Ross Collin is ran him in races that didn't suit or weren't being aimed at too many times. And the horse lost all confidence. And he ran a really poor race in the Buckingham Palace Stakes again this year. Off a £10 lower mark. Was it 10 or 11? It was £10 lower mark than when he was running it last year when he finished third. He should have been able to go much better than what he did. That was disappointing, and I think that was accumulation of multiple runs where they were kind of trying to get him aimed at the returning off a lower mark. So I know before his run at Epsom, reportedly, so says a well-known pundit, he was told that the race at Epsom was not the target. They were all geared around returning to Ascot. But that was his 5th consecutive run that maybe wasn't being aimed at. His run at Leopardstown probably was his last good run where he'd actually been trying to win a race at the end of last season, when 5th in the Sovereign Path Handicap at Leopardstown. After that, maybe he was aimed at the Challenge Cup, but then he's disappointed in that. He disappointed in the Balmoral. He disappointed at Haydock over the wrong trip. He then ran on soft ground at Ascot, so that's 2 runs that we can cross off. Wrong trip, wrong ground, and then they went up in trip, wrong trip again. Why did they keep going on the downward curve? I know they had a horse that was therefore very, very well handicapped, but the horse had lost all confidence. They've definitely got to try and find a confidence boosting race for him. I don't know whether this is it, but where would I run him? I'd probably be looking in this race here. It's a Whirlpool handicap class 3 for 3-year-old and older horses for ratings between 76 and 95. Now obviously rated 91, he would get in and relatively near the top, so he'd be taking on inferior opposition rather than supposedly superior opposition that he has been running against, particularly in the Buckingham Palace when he was right at the bottom of the handicap. That could be the kick he needs to be able to run a good race, potentially win it, and then go back on to better things, going back up the handicap. I don't think he's lost it completely, but they definitely need to drop him in class next time, because if they keep running in these big handicaps, he's just going to keep getting beat now. So moving on to the next horse that is interesting for me, and this is very much like Lethal Levi, and not Lethal Levi, Blue for You. I want to give him another run. So Summergand disappointed, or he ran okay, finished 12th in the Wokingham, beaten at 25 to 1. Now he's dropped £3 to 100. That's £9 lower than when he was running on the all weather over the winter, and actually £8 lower than when he finished second in a Group 3, but it was a Group 3. His previous run before that, he was winning a handicap at the Ayr Gold Cup of 97. So a £3 lower mark. He'd also won the Skybet Constantine handicap at York of 97. For me, they're the two races that I want to see him in again. But they're not going to be until the end of August. So in July, you can get another run into him. You can run him potentially at Goodwood or potentially back at Ascot. And I just feel that off 100, he might find there's a few better horses or better handicapped horses than him. And he may just run okay again, 5th, 6th, 7th sort of thing. If the handicapper then drops him another couple of pounds, say he's off 98, I'd be very keen on him then. Off 98 for the Sky Bet Constantine handicap at York and the Ayr Gold Cup, that's when he would then come into the reckoning for those races. I think he needs to be at 98, 97, 96 before I'd be really, really interested in him for the big handicaps. What have I highlighted? I think I was going to highlight the races at Goodwood. Moving on to the next horse, Tis Marvellous. He has dropped £3 to 102 from a previous high of like 113. He was 113 after winning a listed race at Ascot last season. Now, Ascot is where I think you'd go back with him, and I kind of want them to give him one more run because he's currently rated, as I said, a mark of 102. There is a race in Ascot next month that if he got beaten that and say he dropped to 100, we'll say he drops to a mark of 100, that would only be, 100, what did I say he is? It's 102. It's actually the same mark as when winning the Dubai duty-free Shergold Cup Dash. It's only worth 20 grand, but the horse is 9 years old. You can't be thinking that you got a 9-year-old who's going to be winning the big Group 1 or the big heritage handicaps. This is the type of handicap you need to be aiming Tis Marvellous in. So if he turned off 102, he would surely go really well. But if he turns up after another race, because this isn't until August, if he turns up after another race off, say, 101, 100, yeah, I'd be very, very interested in him. I know looks like he's lost his form, finished last in the Wokingham, last in a Group 3, 9th of 10 in a listed race, and 7th of 12 in a Group 3. But it was only this time last year that he was winning the Beverly Hill Billet, or this time-ish last year. He went from finishing 10th in the King's Stands at Royal Ascot straight to the Beverly Bullet. But I would be targeting not the Beverly Bullet this time. I would go for the Dubai Duty Free handicap and try and win a handicap. I just think he might find something too good for him at Beverly at the age of 9. 2 more to go, I think, and we will continue with Intelligent, who's dropped a whopping £4 for his effort in the Royal Hunt Cup. Now, that was disappointing, but to be fair, that was his own real disappointment in a long while. You know, his 6th of 12 beaten by Bear Force 1 2 runs ago. There was nothing wrong with that performance, really. But after Royal Ascot last year off 105, he went to York for the John Smith's handicap. He stepped up in trip, and I just think that might have stunted his speed. I think he's lost a bit of his speed by going up in trip to this York race and this Haydock race. But that's fine. What they've got to do now is then go back up in trip to those trips, and he's got to go back for this race, the John Smith's handicap, the John Smith's Cup. Great prize money. He finished 3rd last year to Anmat and Ashelua. Anmat and how do you say that one? Ashelua? Achelu, for those who don't bother with any pronunciation at all. Now, Ashelua had finished 2nd in the John Smith's Cup and then went to York and won a listed race. So that form worked out quite well. And Anmar, after winning the John Smith's Cup, went to a Group 3 at Haydock and won that. He won a Group 2 at Longchamp and has recently won a Group 1 at Longchamp, having finished second in a Group 3 behind Adia. I mean, Anmart that day was just ridiculously well handicapped. So Asherwa ran off 98 with a £5 claimer, so was essentially running off 93. He's now rated 102, so £9 higher. Anmart was running off 103. He's recently won a Group 1 when he was rated 118, so up £15. So that's £15, and I can't remember what I said for the other one now. Asherwa 93, 9. So £9 and £15 higher, whereas Intelligent could run off a mark of 100, which is £5 lower than when finishing third. So he's £5 lower, and the other two would be £9 and £15 higher. I think Intelligent would be a great bet in this John Smith's Cup if they decide to go there. Surely that's where they go. After Royal Ascot last season, he did maintain a good level of form. He finished third in that John Smith's Cup, and then he ran another good race when he was seventh in a Group 3. That wasn't the best effort, but then after that it was Group 3, a handicap on his return recently, and then disappointing in the Royal Hunt Cup. But that was over the trips that I think don't suit him now. I think he wants that mile and two, and that John Smith's handicap is definitely where they've got to go with Intelligent. And the final horse I want to talk about is a bit of a wild card in this. It's Prince of Pillow, down £4 to 98 after disappointing in the Palace of Holyrood Stakes. Now, his effort before that at Haydock was probably a bit too... they were tilting at windmills, I think is the phrase. He disappointed in a listed race, but had previously ran a good race when third behind Rumstar in a Group 3, sorry. But the thing that catches my eye is his form at Ayr. He's won, and he won on debut over 6. And I just wonder whether they might be planning to get to this race, the Ayr Gold Cup, with him in whatever fashion they can. So currently rated, what did I say he was rated? 98. Let's just have a look on my other screen. 98, I said. Where would that get him in the handicap? Yeah. So 98 gets him smack bang in the middle, pretty much. So he's almost got a couple of pounds to play with even for the Ayr Gold Cup. And I wonder whether that might be what they do with him next. Keep running in it, or not keep running, but run him in a couple more races that maybe aren't going to suit him before returning to handicap company or running in a handicap the Ayr Gold Cup at the end of the season. 77 grand to win it. It's good prize money. I think they get a £2 allowance, the 3-year-olds, which is what he is. So yeah, I'm just interested in Prince of Pillow, but towards the end of the season at Ayr, if they plan it right, they could certainly turn up in the Ayr Gold Cup with a good chance.